Today we begin a little break from listening to the Gospel of St. Mark, and we are beginning a 5-week series on John chapter 6, the Bread of Life Discourse. And we begin with this passage that we heard today with the account of the miraculous feeding of the 5,000. Now, there are several accounts of miracles of Jesus multiplying food for people to eat. But I think this one is my favorite, and it's my favorite for one particular line. It's from St. Andrew. So Andrew says, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" It gives us an insight to the apostles and their struggle in the faith. Right? That he, after following Jesus for a little while, seeing Jesus work, is still having doubts and questioning and wondering how things are going to happen. And I think that line sort of resonates with me. Hopefully it resonates with you. And I think it shows that we still have this tendency to doubt. And we doubt in 3 ways. We doubt ourselves, we doubt the Lord, and we doubt the church. And so I want to go through those 3 different facets, I guess, of our doubt. So first, that we doubt ourselves. This past weekend, I gave a little retreat to some friends of mine, and as part of their retreat, they started reading from a book that they're going to use throughout the year, and it was this woman writing about how her mom made the table at their home this great gathering place, how she fed many people there, and how she had a desire to do the same. And so my friends were talking about this, and they gave all their little opinions, and a couple of them said that they hesitated to do this as much as they wanted to have this same tradition, that they hesitate at times to invite people over because things aren't perfect. Maybe their house is not quite in order, maybe they're not the best of cooks, whatever the reason might be, that things simply aren't perfect. And so they're worried about a lot of things going wrong. But I think when we think about it and get down to the real point, they're maybe not so concerned about the food not being just right or the house being a little mess, but we're concerned with how that would reflect on us. If my meal is not perfect, then I'm a failure. Right? If one of my little trinkets at my house is out of place, I am a complete lost cause. Right? If I have clothes that aren't folded, well, I'm just a terrible person. Right? And so we doubt ourselves. And this translates also into the spiritual life. Right? That if I don't use my gifts for the Lord, or if I think they're not good enough, it's because I think I'm not good enough. Right? How can God love me with these little small gifts that I have? This was a big part of my time in the seminary, dealing with this kind of stuff. Right? Especially in my theology, I studied with guys from all over the U.S., all over the world, and they had so many incredible gifts. The guy 2 doors down from me spoke like 7 languages. He took his canon law exam in Latin, talking to his professor in Latin, and then when he got tripped up, he switched to Italian. I took 1 exam in Italian, and when I finished, the professor looked at me. This is a true story. He looked at me and he said, that wasn't that good. I said, "I'm sorry, my Italian's not too good." He said, "Well, it wasn't just the Italian." I studied with guys who had completed med school, who had worked for NASA, right? Had all of these amazing gifts. And then here I was, this guy from South Louisiana who was like halfway decent at a few things. And it was a struggle to put my gifts that God has given me to use because I felt like they weren't good enough. I felt like in a lot of ways I wasn't good enough. Now, this self-doubt that we experience at times is ultimately a deeper problem in our spiritual life. It's not just that I doubt myself, but it's that I doubt God. Right? That I doubt that He is enough. Right? This is what Andrew says. What good is so little for such a great crowd? What good are my little gifts for such a great task that you have given me? We can all apply that to our lives. What good is the little that you've given me for the task ahead of me? And it's a doubt, it's a lack of trust in God's goodness, in God's power to be able to use the gifts that He Himself has given us for the mission that He's given us. It's doubting that He is good enough to use what He's given us to fulfill the mission. And when we begin to doubt, we should remember that this is God. The same God that created everything that exists out of nothing. The same God that worked the miracle that we heard of in today's gospel, that worked all of the miracles that we hear of in the Gospels. This is God whose Son rose from the dead. That's not something that happens all that often. I have never seen anyone rise from the dead. That is an amazing thing, right? If God can do that, then why can't He use the gifts that He's given me to be able to fulfill the mission that He's given me? Right? And so we have to remember this when we are in those situations where we are tempted to doubt. The last way that I think we doubt, that I want to talk about tonight, is that we doubt the church, which sort of makes sense and flows from that doubt of God, right? If we don't trust God, then why are we going to trust the church that He's established to continue the work of Christ until He returns? Right? And an extreme example of this doubting the church is people who get frustrated or don't see enough progress or whatever it is, and they leave. Right? They leave the church and they search out salvation somewhere else, or maybe they just stop searching for salvation. Right? They lose that trust in God's ability to do good things to the church, and they leave it. A less extreme, but maybe equally harmful doubt of the church is putting off confession. Right? Not trusting in the normal way that God has given us to be reconciled to Him, to receive His grace. Not coming to Mass on a regular basis, not saying our daily prayers. Right? And I think that we can doubt these, again, with the words of St. Andrew, what good is this little gift for such a great amount of people, for such a great problem that we see? Right? We know our sinfulness. We know that we struggle. And we're not seeing progress as quickly as we'd like to see it. So why keep going to confession over and over again? Why keep going to Mass? It feels like it's not doing any good. Do we trust God, and do we trust the church as that instrument of salvation that He has left for us? Right? Those gifts that He's given us seem small, but they are the means that He's given us, and it's going to take time. I read something today that said that our life is a marathon, not a sprint. And so as much as I would like to see in my own life all of my problems go away very quickly, it's not going to happen. Right? It's only over time, over years and years and years of going to Mass and going to confession and reading and praying and doing all of those things that I finally can look back and see that I'm making some progress. And I trust that the same is going to happen in the future. And so tonight we renew our commitment to trust ourselves, to trust God, and to trust the church. Right? We bring Him our imperfect gifts that a lot of times seem too small. We do it trusting in His power to transform those gifts, to transform them, to multiply them, and to use them to not only perfect those around us, but to change us and to make us more like Himself.